of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If you haven't signed the register in the back of the room, if you'd do so, we'd appreciate it. Roll call of the board.
Ms. Dong?
Here.
Mr. Hernandez? Mr. Jaramillo? Ms. Quintero?
Present.
Mr. Crouch?
Present. Do you have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Dong?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye. Motion passes. Board comments. Ms. Dong.
Yes, I think I'm going to leave my comments for the conference for when we have it agendized, but just want to welcome all the nice red we have in here, and welcome all the teachers you got here, even though it's summertime, and we appreciate that, and also welcome all the 12-month employees. because I know that, you wish it could have been an option. But just welcome all of you here, and thank you, for all being here, and all of us working together to make sure that when we start the school year, we start it running. Thank you.
Ms. Quintero.
I just want everybody to breathe in and breathe out. It's going to be a long, hot summer, but it'll be a good summer. Okay?
And I don't have any comments for tonight. Mr. Holmes, Superintendent's report?
Absolutely. There we go. President Crouch, members of the governing board, members of the audience. This is short, but I think it's important to highlight our graduations this year, particularly in 2017. We had really congratulations to our families and students for success. I think Desert View for the first time actually had more graduates in Sunnyside High School, and that's that's interesting because for the many years we saw kind of that lack of parity for lack of a better word. But I still see that both high schools are doing exceptionally well, and the friendly competition is nice, but at the same time we saw a lot of collegiality between both schools, and they did a wonderful job at the ceremony. So definitely want to give them a thank you as we turn on the wonderful screen. There we go.
The board had gone dark.
It's a cable bill. We had our retirement celebration. We have Lieutenant Colonel there. So best wishes go out to employees who will be enjoying their retirement. Sunnyside District held its annual retirement breakfast to celebrate 20 individuals representing combined 321 years of service. 5 of the retirees will be leaving the district with over 25 years of service. I want to thank everyone, and Lieutenant Colonel, you'll definitely be missed. Hard positions to fill. We also have in March 2017, an online open enrollment request form was created for the district. Since that day, the district has received 122 open enrollment requests from other district private schools and home school students. So I think, as we look at ways to attract more students, sometimes some of the simplest ways of just putting a form online can result in not having to spend millions of marketing dollars, but really just making things convenient for people who can have access and know how to navigate the system. So that was good to be able to track some of those numbers. And then finally, summer curriculum work. This is actually very, very great. We have over 200 teachers and librarians from across the district currently working on a curriculum in the upcoming school year. We have elementary, middle, and high school levels representing the areas of math, English language arts, science, social studies, and our English language learner SEI teachers. These teacher leaders are invaluable and working hard even during the summer break. So when we talk about 12-month, we have 12-month teachers too, working 12 months. I appreciate all the effort to help us and guide us and make sure that their voice is at the table as well. So thank you. That concludes our superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. And as far as I know, we do not have recognitions tonight. Next on the agenda is call to the audience. While we're getting the podium set up, I think we should review our norms. As we all know, students may be watching, even though they may not be in the room, since we are live streaming our meetings. We have no idea who is watching.
Santa. Santa. is-
Santa could be. So we want to communicate respectfully with your words, tone, and body language. Respect others by listening to their comments and points of view. Professionally disagree when communicating different points of view. And focus your comments on specific issues without individual names. And the call of the audience is limited to 3 minutes per person. First member of the audience is Mary Martinez.
Good evening, board members, President Crouch, Mr. Holmes, and audience members. My name is Mary Martinez, and I am here representing the Sunnyside Education Association and also speaking on behalf of SEA. I would like to address the possibility of our district going for an override. In May, SEA took the initiative and developed an override survey. SEA asked all site principals and departments to send it out for us to all employees at their sites. The majority of our employees received the survey. 3 minutes is not sufficient time to really give you guys all the feedback on it, but I'm going to give you a little glimpse into what we got from it. So the results were that 486 certified staff members filled it out, which is 60% of our certified members, which is pretty good. 85 classified filled it out. We know that, talking with Cassandra, that much of that was with the limited, internet access they have throughout the day. So we're kind of working with the two associations to kind of figure that one out. 27 administrators responded. So what did we learn from this survey? We learned that 63.1% of those who responded to the survey agree that our district should go for an override. Part of it was that we need the funds, and also because the lack of funding from the state. 29.2 responded a maybe. They felt that they did not have enough information, so they need a little bit of clarification on how the funds would be used and how much it would cost the community. And 7.6 responded no, and there were various different kinds of reasons why. So, kind of looking at what are the next steps for SEA and SEA. So SEA and SEA leadership, we are prepared to help with the override efforts if the governing board votes on June 27th to pass the override, to place the override on the ballot. And then in August, both associations will have a vote of our membership. So the commitment level of the employees, according to what our survey showed, we had between 100 to 200 for canvassing for phone banks that volunteered their time, gave us personal information on how to contact them or email them on what they could do to help us out. So what is it that we need from our governing board and district leadership? Okay, as SEA and SCEA, we need a clear message on what the override funds will be used for. Okay, we also need a clear message on the priorities if and when funds become available in our M&O budget. So in order for us to be able to clarify for our members and the rest of the employees, we need to be able to message it out there how this would benefit our students, our community, and also the employees of the district. Thank you.
Next is Jessica Cole.
Hello, governing board members, Mr. Holmes, members of the audience. I just wanted to address a couple of things about a path to victory for the override should it be placed on the ballot. We've been working with some of our AEA consultants to look at numbers and data based on past elections of a similar scope, the Proposition 123 election and the past 2 override elections, to kind of get an estimate about numbers that would be needed in the community to vote for an override for it to pass, and then actions necessary on the part of a override committee to ensure passage. So right now, we're looking at about 3,500 yes votes would be needed to win an override, and again, that's based on data from 7 past elections. The past 2 overrides failed by less than 10% each time, so it's definitely doable. It's a small margin of less than 500 voters each time who were the difference between a passage and a not passage. So what do we need to do differently than what we've done before? One is that we need a broad-based coalition of teachers, community members, classified staff, and administrators all working together to really approach our community so that it's a grassroots movement. It's not just a few individuals. So that way we can really get our message out there. Our message to the community needs to be unified about the positive impact this would have on students. It needs to be student-based and needs to support programs that our community can clearly identify as indicators of student success. So we need to be able to, for our community members, draw a line clearly between how funds usage would equal student success, would equal improved community and property values for our voters. One of the ways that we can do this is through a professional campaign involving a direct mail strategy, voter contact that's data-based and strategic. We talk about that all the time when it comes to pedagogy, but it also needs to apply to how we try to go for the override. We need to really closely target and look at which voters we're talking to, how we're talking to them, who's talking to them, and how many times we're talking to them. Really, people that we want to persuade, we need to be hitting at least 3 times in a targeted way, and not just depending solely on volunteers, and having that commitment from our broad-based coalition. I'm happy to answer any questions after this about anything that you have, any questions that you have about how we see a path to victory, or meet with you one-on-one at another time. But this is definitely doable and something we can win for our kids. Thank you.
Paul Cunningham.
Good evening. My name is Paul Cunningham, President Crouch, members of the Government Board, Mr. Superintendent. Thank you for having me. I wanted to say a few things today. I wanted to start by saying thank you for letting me work here because it's a great job. Believe it or not, I've been associated with this district since 2001 in different measures. I started out at Sierra Middle School as the safe school PO, but Sunnyside's become an adopted second neighborhood. And as you know, I have quite an affinity to the east side of town. But the bottom line is that I'm honored to be part of this, and I was honored to be part of it more this school year. So thank you. This is the first thing I wanted to tell you this afternoon. The second thing I wanted to tell you this afternoon is that I come from experience with overrides. If you read the papers, you notice that we won 2-1 in our last tax increase, which is not an easy ask. But we also won before that when we passed 409 5 years ago to improve roads in Tucson. And it comes from a lot of the things that Ms. Cole just mentioned. We've got to be organized on the outside, but it is an absolute easy win. We have to ask ourselves as a district whether or not help is truly going to come from the feds and the state. And I think more and more, as the laws progress and the world changes, it's important that our district and our community stand on its own 2 feet. And that starts with putting this override on the ballot. This override can do a number of things. I give this advice to this governing board right now. Have some measure of specificity on what you're asking for. Make sure that you're showing that it's going to increase not only our teacher engagement, but our student and family engagement. One of the things that can do that are extracurricular activities. I coached the JV team this past year as well. I've coached basketball, girls softball. I think I've coached every single sport I can think of in this district at some point. And it's amazing to me that when a child is engaged in their school and believes in their school, how much work gets done in the classroom, how much less time is spent in the office. All of a sudden you have buy-in from a kid you never thought you would. And it isn't just sports. I'm talking about all extracurriculars, whether it be dance, whether it be weightlifting, weight training, music, band, orchestra. Believe it or not, I will teach a jazz dance class if you give me the chance. I can kickball, change, and pas de bourrée with the best of them. The bottom line is is that if we're specific on how we're going to use this money to keep our children engaged, but also keep our families engaged, we're going to win the day. Thank you for having me this evening.
That's all the call to the audience. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda.
Mr. Crouch,
Ms. Dong,
I move that we accept the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
roll call.
Ms. Dong?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye. Motion passes. Next, we're under general functions. I would like to move up 4C to the beginning of the general functions. Are there any objections from the board?
No, thank you.
No.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the self-funded trust and Board of Trustees timeline. Dr. Bergman?
Good evening, President Crouch, members of the board, Superintendent Holmes, and members of the audience. Thank you for moving this forward. That was very nice. I'm going to bring forward our representatives from CBIZ so that we can start the discussion of looking at the self-funded trust and the Board of Trustees timeline that we need to put in place before, well, in July. And I want to introduce, I'd like to introduce Eric Rustin, and we also have Christina Cott, who you've met before. But Eric's going to take the lead and work you through the PowerPoint and questions that you have on what we're going to cover with you tonight on building that trust rules. Okay, Eric?
That work?
Yes, that works.
Okay.
And you just click here to move forward.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Members of the board, thank you very much, and staff, thank you very much for having us. This is really just to take the next step in the formation of a trust to manage a self-funded health plan or a partially self-funded health plan in lieu of a fully insured plan, which you've had for a number of years. My name's Eric Rustan. I'm the Arizona Market President for CBIZ, and Christine and I work, and over the past few months have been evaluating the opportunity for Sunnyside to form this trust and to be able to participate in a different way in which for procuring their medical benefits and potentially more benefits down the road. So I really wanted to just walk you through a few important decisions that have to be made at the governing board level. One is the name of the trust. That's fairly simple, or we can call it Sunnyside Employee Benefits Trust. We can name it a number of different things, but the attorneys have basically weighed in to tell us that we need to name the trust is the first item up for discussion. Secondly, you establish a trust by a couple of different ways through trustees that are appointed to a board to oversee the trust. And if you have, by statute, if you have an employee of the district that is on that trust board, you need to have 4 other members of the trust. And our recommendation is such that we would recommend that you have your HR director participate on the trust, or Laura potentially on the trust as the representative of an employee of Sunnyside Unified School District. From there, you would name 4 individuals that would potentially be community members. They might be a close relationship from a board perspective in years past, but we would recommend that you not have a board member on the trust committee. Unfortunately, other districts have gone down this road, and it tends to politicize the discussion far too much, and it compromises board members in that discussion. So our recommendation is such that you would leave it to the staff to have the position on the board, and then have 4 community members that would go through an application process. So what is the application process, and what would they have to provide? We've already talked to a few individuals that might fit the bill for someone that you might want to consider to sit on your trust board. They would need to submit a resume, 3 references, and a letter of intent document that states why they would like to work with the trust. Perhaps they've had experience in working in that regard with other entities, and then a disclosure statement or a conflict of interest statement that says there are no conflicts of interest in their serving in that capacity. So there are a number of different details around the time of service and things like that that will be worked out by the attorney who is writing your trust document, but the entire trust board and trust itself would be governed by a trust document that would be written for you. The next is an application that would be filled out by them. submitted to you all for consideration, and the board members are appointed by recommendation from the trust, from the individuals that participate in the trust, but to be finally certified or approved by the governing board. So you would need to make the final approval of any trustees that would be sitting members of the trust board. So I think that's important. From a timeline perspective, to give you an idea of what needs to happen and the steps to make it happen, this is the governing board member, this is the board meeting by which we would start the process of gathering applications or applicants that you would consider for your June 27th board meeting to potentially seat as members of the trust board. The trust document and all of the decision points will be circulated for your review to make sure that that everything is met with your approval. And then on July 11th, the governing board would execute a trust agreement and approve the trustees and appoint them. And following July 11th, at that meeting, you would have the establishment of your EIN number, your trust document would be finally approved, and you'd be on your way to the establishment of the trust, and meetings begin at that point. So really, I wanted to just give you the gentle framework of how to go about this and the next steps that need to occur, and then answer any questions that you might have with regards to either the formation, the execution, or the management of that trust on a go-forward basis.
I have a quick question on the, in terms of bylaws or rules of operation of the trust, would you provide that as well, or would the attorney
Yes.
provide that?
So that is being provided and is being reviewed by an attorney from Gus Rosenfeld, Christine Noyes, and she is writing the trust document for you, have all the governing rules in it.
And the name could be something as simple as Sunnyside Unified School District Trust?
Employee Benefits Trust.
Or,
Yep.
or Employee Benefits Trust? Okay.
Yep. And they have recommended that it be a very basic name.
Ms. Stone?
Just one quick question, because I didn't see it when I was reading through it. These people that we have on the trust, on the board for the trust, how long do they serve?
So the board representative, excuse me, the employee representative that would be on the board would serve until a time undetermined, so until you choose to make a change. The others would be, what is recommended is a 3-year term. So you can have that written so that the board members serve until you want to make a change, or until, in perpetuity, until they choose to resign or recuse themselves. But you can write it in a number of different ways. The recommendation is 3 years that they would be their term. And then there would be alternating years so that a third of the members are rotating off each year.
Mr. Holmes?
Mr. Crouch, what type of people would you traditionally seek out to become a part of a trust?
So it's a great question. So obviously the trust is dealing with a lot of money. So you would want to have someone with a financial mind, potentially in an investment capacity, because you're going to be writing an investment policy from the board perspective, the trust board perspective. Another, because it deals with medical benefits, potentially would be a medical provider. Perhaps someone from the community that is a leader of a provider community, either a hospital or a community health center, or a large provider group. You could also have a banker. You will have some banking relationships, so that potentially someone who has experience in banking or accounting would also be a good type of a board member. And then someone else who is, I think, very close to the pulse of those that the trust is serving, which might be a former teacher, might be a former staff member of some of those, or retired staff members, some of those types of individuals.
Ms. Quintero?
So would we get to see those in bylaws before
Yes.
we could make changes if we see fit?
Yes. So you will see a final draft. It's in the final stages now. They've gone through and corrected all of those things that needed to be corrected by statute. And obviously the name and such like that will be added to it once that's finalized and decided upon. But you will get to see a final document before you have to approve it.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Pretty straightforward.
So it sounds like, based off the name, we should have employee benefits in there for the trust name.
Most likely, yes.
So Sunnyside Employee Benefit Trust would probably be better than something longer with Unified School District and
I would
Enrollment.
agree. I would agree. I think one of the important distinctions in the bylaws and in the language with the trust document will be that they will include all of the benefits that potentially could be covered under the trust. They don't recommend to just put medical in so that you would have to subsequently come back and amend that trust for each other benefit that you would put into it. So to put them all in from a language perspective, and then you can pick and choose which ones are actually administered and managed by the trust.
Ms. Quintero?
Because there's lots of school districts named Sunnyside, wouldn't we want to specify it for school district number 12? It's
You-
like,
you
so
very
it's
well could.
exact.
Yep, you very well could. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I think SEBT sounds good.
Okay.
We love our acronyms.
Ms. Dong, did you have a motion? Or?
Oh, yes, my motion is,
It's information.
It's
Oh, just
information
information?
only,
Oh.
yeah.
You don't
Okay.
have
We
to
don't.
find
yeah,
out.
because until we get our name and everything.
We can't do
Okay.
anything.
You don't have to
Okay.
move on anything today.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I'm thinking because we were out of sequence, I thought maybe I missed something.
Oh, no.
It's just because we were out
Yeah,
of
it's just
sequence.
information.
That's okay.
All right. Next on the agenda is the override discussion. Mr. Encinas?
Thank you, Mr. Crouch, board members, Superintendent Holmes.
Yeah.
Sunnyside Unified School District has had an override, MNO override election, override authorization in place since 1987. The last election that was successful was 2007, and that authorization expired in 2014-15. So for the past 3 fiscal years, the district has been operating basically totally on funds provided by the state of Arizona through its funding formula for funding public education. And as we all know, state legislature has failed to adequately fund public schools. Many school districts throughout the state of Arizona have come to that realization, and their response to that lack of funding has been going to the communities and asking for voter authorization of overrides, which basically asks voters of that community to approve to increase their property taxes, to generate funds, to provide funds for programs they feel are necessary to operate their school district. Sunnyside School District is now in the position that we should seriously consider having governing board call for an M&O override for November 7th, 2017. The issue, though, at hand is with the amount of the override, what should it be? And then basically, what is the tax implications of that override to the voters? And basically, some projections that I've made based on declining enrollment that we've had, and I've based these projections on that declining enrollment. If the board were to call for an override of 10%, it would generate an additional $7.9 million of budget capacity, would require a tax rate increase of $1.85, almost $1.86 per $100 of assessed valuation, which basically means for the average homeowner in Sunnyside, it would cost them $138 in property taxes per year, or $11.50 per month. A 12% override would generate approximately $9.5 million, and the tax rate required to generate this amount of funds would be $2.22 per $100 of assessed valuation. The average homeowner would pay an additional $165 in property taxes, or an average of about $13.75 per month. Tonight, we're asking the governing board that we're in a position as an administration to proceed with preparation of documents necessary for your consideration to call for an override on June 27th, 2017. And if so, then not so directed, we will proceed along those lines. And on June 27th, then you can take formal action regarding that request.
Mr. Holmes?
Sure. President Crouch and members of the governing board, some of the discussions that I've been engaged with staffs, have been able to have some dialogue and share a little bit with all of our school staffs, some of the challenges that have faced us with federal and state funds. Certainly, there's not a lot of signals that I feel like we're getting from any of those two levels that suggest that there will be more money coming to public schools, traditional public schools. For that very reason, this is why we're even having this discussion around the override. However, I think the caveat to all this is that we really got to start looking at areas that we truly believe the community will support. And as we look at our community specifically, the level of poverty by which many of our families live in, it has to be something that resonates directly with them. One of the things that I will make public, because I know it's important for all of our teachers, and there's no doubt that improving salaries for our employees, particularly our teachers in classified, is important. However, I'm not sure as a ballot measure it would get the support from our community. That's just being quite candid. That doesn't downplay the fact that we want to continue to commit to looking at ways to continue the steps, because we have a salary schedule, and that's something that we need to commit to. It's something that we also have to look forward to with our increase in minimum wage and how we're going to deal with compression in the salary. Those two big areas, I don't want to necessarily to become part of the override, but I don't want to lose sight that those commitments are still there, and hopefully through some of these other areas that we believe the community will support, it would free up funds to be able to continue our commitments there, notwithstanding potential increases in enrollment, or maybe some good things do happen at the federal or state level. That being said, the areas that I've heard, at least in my conversations, I feel are valued in our community are the areas of athletics and the areas of the arts. Those are two big areas, and after-school activities. I'm kind of lumping those on categorically, but seem to be where I see the most engagement with parents, but equally important, I firmly believe in my core beliefs that those are areas that do add to student achievement, because ultimately I believe our community cares is that we're performing well and our kids are doing well and we're producing great citizens, but I don't believe that happens in isolation without these great other programs that I do think make a well-rounded individual. Those of us that grew up in the district know full well that we grew up very much valuing either the arts or athletics or things that we really feel made us better models for our community. So I see those are the areas that I would like to kind of just make some suggestions that would be categorically what we would look at. I mean, there's some affirmations that I've received both from staff and community members that seems to be areas that you would garner some more additional support. To be more specific, however, in how it could benefit teachers, because I think that's the connection we need to make. Right? So how we're benefiting kids, to what end, if it's not tied directly to teachers, what are those benefits? I mean, in my mind, as we begin to shape messages, some of the things that resonate with me is that, and I think our councilman did a nice job, is that there are kids who are engaged in school for other reasons also have a reason to be there, tend to, and I'm not drawing a direct correlation, I said tend to, in large part, be more connected to their academics. Whether it be because they want to stay eligible, which is that's still good because there is an incentive, or it be because something about that relationship that was built with the coaches or staff draws them daily to coming to school. And those relationships are run really deep when you look at coaches who have been there and kids who are participating. And I do find that it does assist with parental participation. I mean, the amount of parents that are out there watching their kids compete does have a trickle-up effect into the academics. I still do see a mutual benefit. However, I know at the elementary level, which is something I would propose, there's not very many activities that happen for our kids after school in those areas, which would be part of this ballot measure if we choose to do that. With the arts, and in particular the music, fine arts, any of the performing arts, similar benefits. I mean, there's studies that show the impact it has on student achievement and why we believe that really helps and it can assist our students. I think what I don't want to lose sight of is that part of this would ask for us to put all of our specialists back to full-time, because the mutual benefit there for teachers would be that we would have planning time back for teachers. And I want to make sure when we message it, it's not that we create more time that the district takes over. It's more time that we actually give the teachers to do the planning, which is something they valued for a long time. So I want to go on record kind of suggesting that, because I think we become overzealous in our efforts to help support folks, and in that way, sometimes we don't take the step back to value the individual time that that teacher needs. So I want to make sure that becomes part of how we look at the idea of bringing specialists back, to include our music, our PE, which is still currently full-time, our art teachers, and our librarians as well, in that kind of bigger area. Some other areas that I'm in consideration, so I'm just peppering you with some big ideas of lists that I've kind of jotted down as we begin to draft language, are kind of our star academic high school as well. You're looking at some electives there. You have kids who want somewhat of a comprehensive experience, although they're not, and I'm not suggesting that we put a full menu of arts, but a couple folks that can provide daily services for music. We have so much talented musicians there, and we have no music classes there at Star Academic Center. And one area that I think has a lot of great potential that we haven't really gone down the road is internship opportunities for kids through our CT and JTID programs. I'd like to see us look at expanding those opportunities for our students. I still think those work-related experience could have very, very great value for our kids, particularly if they're related to a work. What those soft skills that they learn there do transfer back into the classroom. I know that for a fact. That's if you have an employed student, they know there's some certain expectations that a student that's never had a job has not ever experienced. And so those are just big ideas. Again, with the athletics, there are some expectations that we would look at our coaching staff model. I can tell you that in some of our programs, we're unable to put a coaching team together for freshmen. I mean, because we're trying to make sure we have assistant coaches at the varsity level. If we're trying to compete at the 6A level, which we're currently scheduled into, we want to provide enough staff that's going to provide the coaching necessary to compete at that level. And that requires us to look at funding our athletic programs more, and maybe potentially looking at certain programs with additional assistant coaches, things of that nature. So again, that's when I'm thinking about coaches, particularly at the high school, that athletics, that's an area. Reducing our fees back, and looking this at messaging with our community that the offset in their taxes would benefit, it'd be a wash with what they would be paying for athletic fees. Some of those things, and really looking at a capital part of this that would be part of the 12% that would allow us to do refreshes on uniforms. As crazy as that sounds in the minutia of the details that I know we're talking about with, provide a lot of details, I think it is meaningful to parents when you have, complaints about, hey, when are you getting new uniforms? You guys look real shabby with what you've been wearing. And those things have pride. Brings pride to the district, but brings pride to those individual schools. And I still think all of these areas have mutual benefit for our teachers, but I want to make sure we're continuing to message that and making sure that the value of financial increases for our teachers is not lost in this, that it becomes kind of somewhat of a priority without committing us to something that long-term is just placation, right? And I don't want to just placate people. I want to make sure that we're not being just politicizing this, is that we're really being very real, what we can and cannot do, and being, again, realistic with our current financial situation so that we're not sending mixed messages as well. So those are just big ideas that we've been collecting over time that we'll formalize in 2 weeks as we make a decision.
Ms. Quintero?
Part of being able to pass the override is the trust in the community and making sure that we have that still, or we're building it. So I would like to see that, like the bond advisory committee, we have a committee for the override.
That would probably be up to the board to define that.
Right. I'm throwing that out there.
Ms. John?
Are you done?
Yes.
Okay. A couple of real quick things. First of all, it really makes me happy to hear that the SEA, SCEA, and SAA are all on board, because that's what we need. We need unity, just like it was stated earlier. We really need this unity. We need the unity from all our employees, and then with all our employees, get the unity from our community to make sure that we lost by very little. We just had a few more doors knocked. If we just had a few more doors knocked, we would be doing really well right now because we would have an override. Without the override, we have been losing and losing and losing so many of our services to our students and to our employees that it has become very, very painful to having this happen. So I'm really glad to see, a sea of red, here and all the others. And I know that our administrators are very much understanding the need for this override and they've been having to try to shuffle things around when we lose the programs. And so I know that they're also very excited about this opportunity, this possibility. And I got a little more clarity right now when you were talking about how we don't go out there just saying that this is for teacher salary, even though we want it to be for teacher salary, very much so. But when we have all the staff out there knocking on the doors, we make sure that they know this is for something that's going to benefit the students. And as it does, of course, it's going to benefit the teachers. But, these are the programs, and be very clear. I think it is very true that our community is very, very involved in our school. This is their hub. This is the hub of our community. And that's because they have been for so many decades now involved in the sports, involved in the band and in the orchestra. When you go to these concerts, oh my gosh, it is filled. The auditoriums at Desert View and in Sunnyside, they are filled with family members coming to hear their child, whether it be elementary, middle, high school, performing, in the orchestra, performing in the band, jazz, also, and stuff like that. And then, the mariachis, of course, bring so much, the folklorico brings so much to our community. And, a lot of people are asking, why did we do all that? Why did we not have band teachers or orchestra teachers or choir teachers throughout the day in our elementary schools? They didn't understand that a bond and an override are two different things. And they thought when they gave all this money to the bond for a fine arts school, that it was going to cover all the other schools. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. An override is so different from a bond. But they said yes to the bond. Why? A good part of that was because of what we put into the sports and what we put into the fine arts school. That was like, everybody's like, oh my gosh, a fine arts school in Sunnyside District. They were so excited. And because it's so important to them. So I think, putting that in is critical. Making sure that they know that we're going to have, bring back the choir teachers to stay. Oh, I miss it when I only have, the choir. I go to hear these things, and I know that they're only in this school for half a year, then in that school for half a year, and I know that the kids miss out when they only have choir for half a year, when they only have art for half a year. They really, truly miss out. And studies have shown, we don't have to think that this is a possibility. Studies have shown that the arts really do develop the brain. Music really develops when it comes to math. But all the arts, the drawing, all of the arts really, studies have shown, really develop the brain. And I think that's, we've had kids come here when we were going to cut the arts and tell us stories and stories about how it has helped them at the university levels and those kind of things. So we do need to make sure that we put in there, the language that has the arts and the sports and those kind of things. All the extracurricular items that not just those things, but there's so many other extracurricular items that our community really loves because their child is in it. They want to go see their child, or they want to hear their child come home from school and say, they might not say what happened in history class, but they will say what happened in the booster club. They will say what happened, they might have great things that happen in the history class, but that's not usually what they're talking about at the dinner table. They're talking about, some of the extracurricular ideas. Nothing bad about history, everybody. I love to teach it myself. Make sure. I used to love history when I taught at Juvie, but these are the things that I think, are important to our community, and that's what we got to touch on right now. What's going to make them put yes in that box? And the arts and all that when the very first time I was a board member and we came to an override, they asked me how I would support the override, and I said we would support it through PE. And so we have PE now. I would support this override really, even more. I mean, I want to support it, but I will support it even more if we had PIAs back into the elementary schools. And this is why. In our community, we have such a need for all of our students, middle school and high school too, we could afford it all. But if we can't, I would need them at least in our elementary schools where our parents are for the first time understanding the role of what their community can do for them. And we don't have enough principals and assistant principals there, and I know we don't call them assistant principals, we call them different names. They just can't all do it. Because there's just such a critical need. I remember I went into one of the elementary schools to read, and there was a parent there that had two babies, one in a wheelchair and one toddler. And this parent was there because they had slept outside of the school all night. The reason they had slept outside of the school all night was because of the domestic violence that was going on in her home. And the parent involvement specialist took the whole day, but was able, with the Mexican consulate, to be able to get housing, to be able to get food for the person, to be able to get clothes, because she ran out of the house without anything, except for her children. And the PIA did so much. The principal, taking that whole day to do this, I'm sure would want to, but has so much more on her plate, and so as well as the other ones. So I really would like it if in this we could put in something about PIAs and when I would walk into the elementary schools, the PIAs had a ton of parents working and volunteering. So that's helpful to the teachers. When you have all the things in the elementary school especially, there's so much little stuff that has to be done, that a PIA coming in and getting all these parents involved and doing this stuff, and besides bringing in food, they always bring in food for, when they come into work, they would help the teachers immensely. So that's one thing that I would have as an ask, that we put in PIAs inside of the elementary schools.
Sunnyside is one of the few school districts in Pima County that does not have an override. That puts us at a tremendous disadvantage to other schools. Bobby doesn't have one because they are not allowed to have one. And I'm not sure, are there any other school districts in Pima County that do not have an override at this point? TSD does not, okay.
Because of the DSEG monies.
Because of the DSEG money, that's right.
And then I think Ajo Unified School District doesn't have one.
Okay. I wasn't in contact with them.
They have 960 kids.
So it puts us at a major disadvantage with other school districts by not having an override to allow us to put in the other programs that we need, the athletic programs, the fine art programs. And again, we don't want to be limited to those programs, but when we message to the public, we have to be very limited on how many different bullets and how many different talking points we can have out there. So having 30 different things on the list is probably going to bury us. People will be overwhelmed, or they'll find one thing on there they really don't like. So I think we're as much as we can to stay fairly general on it, and pick a couple of areas that really are going to resonate with the public, that will resonate with our employees, and will be good for for passing the override, if we decide we're going to go for it. Any other comments from the board, or?
Just one comment in terms of the tax
Mr. Sims?
implications and the tax burden. One of the things that I've tried to communicate, and I've been very effective doing this in the past years, is that Sunnyside is in a very unique situation in that, unlike other school districts, the majority of the taxpayers of this school district are commercial business, utilities, and rental property. The homeowner, occupied homeowner, compromises 25% of our total taxable property. So for every dollar collected in taxes, 25 cents is paid by the homeowner, 75 cents is paid by commercial business and utilities and rental property. Unlike at Amphi School District, where the homeowner pays 50% of the override. And that's because of the assessed valuation.
That's a good point, Mr. Sims. Mr. Quintero?
So knowing that, we ought to go invite some of our business owners to help with the override.
If I was a business owner, I'd say,
There you go. We're gonna pay the most of it.
but in the long run, I think the entire community benefits from
Right.
better
Yeah.
education. I mean,
Yeah,
businesses will want to come here to
Person
Tucson
wants
to locate. Property values will increase. I mean, even if I don't have a child in school, if you have good schools, my home is going to be worth more money.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody benefits from good schools.
The whole community improves.
Yes, sir.
So should we talk a little bit more, or do we need to talk a little bit more about which one of those we're gonna go for? Are we gonna go for the 10% or 12%?
I think
Another
we have to make that decision as a formal vote, don't we, or
yeah.
I don't make a decision, but.
Direction?
This, yeah,
direction?
some thoughts.
What's your preference?
Okay, my preference would be 12%, of course. But I think we need to maybe talk to our employees that live in the district and see, is 165 or 138 more palatable when it comes to them putting, yes. I'd rather go for the 12%, but if we're gonna lose because the 165 sounds higher than 138, I don't wanna lose all of it. But at the same time, I want it all, so.
Well, if you talk about it in terms of month, $11.50 a month or $13.75 a month.
That's a better way to, yeah.
Because
I like
you're
that.
talking about, a couple of lattes or.
Couple lattes. $13.75 per month, yeah. I like the way that sounds better.
Yeah. So. if you-
And 165 doesn't sound like a lot, but for some of our, people,
But if you talk about it on a monthly basis,
yeah,
it
13.75 sounds much better.
doesn't sound unreasonable.
And what do you?
Oh, I myself, see what I circled? I circled 12%.
Yes.
For some of those same reasons. $13.75. My lunch today cost me $14.25. So, that's the cost of a lunch, of a nice lunch. It was buffet. I got a lot. I'm not eating dinner, but I'm good, so, but I'm on a one-meal diet. But I think since we haven't had one for so long and the needs are many, I think we need to, my preference is the 12%.
I'd have to concur on that, so.
Okay.
I don't see any sense of putting the effort into.
That direction.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tong. Are there any other questions that we should at least discuss today? Mr. Holmes?
Just timelines, because we have pretty much 2 weeks from today to kind of put this, some of the facts and figures, Mr. Encina has been doing this long enough, can put together for us. I think the language is going to be probably the, not most contentious, but where we may have some variation in agreement. And so, we'll play around and work a little bit with SEA and Ms. Martinez specifically to see if we can land on something that is general enough to give us kind of umbrellas without getting too specific so that people don't cherry pick what they like and don't like. And so that's the art of all this. And so, how much detail, finding the balance of detail with lack of commitment with certain things that may, it's going to be kind of that art in it. So I think we'll play around and then kind of circulate some ideas in the next couple of weeks and surveying a few folks what they'll resonate, because some of it may not have to be said and inferred, but can be something we look at other budget measures. So I'm thinking out which one of those actually would fit under categorically, because I want to, if we keep it simple, do we look at,
Keep it simple.
right, do we look at categorically something that's cute? I know Ms. Cole and I had this discussion, she had a recommendation, like the 3 A's, like, athletics, activities, and after school. So, but that challenges our ability to write down like PIAs on there. So those are considerations that now are going through my head as the board is making suggestions. How do we keep categorical things with keeping commitments that the board would like us to put in there at the same time? So I want to have that, I'm just thinking out loud right now so that there is certainly everyone understands what the thinking is behind kind of the language, so it doesn't get misinterpreted at the very end as people feel like they've been shortchanged, particularly the other comment that I'll make as if we're beginning to think of an oversight group, the challenge with that becomes that unlike the bond, we're not making yearly or routinely monthly requests. So we got to really think about what that would look like and what would be the purpose, because that's the whole purpose of the bond group is because we're taking requests every month to vote on so that we can actually expend certain things. Because the commitments here are categorical, there's not like a monthly change in this. So we gotta just think through purpose and then what would that look like, right, that's practical, that it doesn't necessarily just have meetings just that won't have any substantive impact. I want people to feel like they're valued in that if we're gonna do something like that, but if they're meeting once a year just to because the salary, if we're committing to specialists aren't gonna change throughout the course of this. So I don't know if there's a verification, so let's think that through as we're having our discussion. That's something that doesn't have to be made for the calling of the election, but it's something I'd like us to think through a little more in depth.
Well, the board really is an oversight committee in itself. I mean, that's our responsibility to approve all the expenditures every year.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Ms. Dong, and then Mr. Sims.
One thing to mention to the board is that if the override is successful, when the board adopts that budget, okay, we will be keeping track of that override amount separately. So when requests are made for approval to fund X, Y, or Z, we will be funding it and creating a separate funding code to be able to identify those programs, those positions, those expenditures directly related to the override separately, so you can keep track of it on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, annual basis. So that oversight will be there even more.
And so we can report that on our website as well.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Dong?
And I just, I know that we got a lot during the call to the audience, the opportunity that AEA is also helping with some suggestions, and I think as they have been working with AEA, they can also take a look at verbiage that has been used at other things, and if they want to stick with the A's, add the fourth A instead of parent involvement, assistant of parents.
Assistance.
Assistance of parents. That's good.
Ms. Quintero?
So I'm not sure if you ever watched The Christmas Story. Right. So everybody knows that child really wanted A+++ on his report. So so you can put A+++, and then you put arts, activities, and athletics. So A+++, because it is A, and it's academics, because it all goes together, right?
And so we have to be careful how we craft the language on it, so it really is marketing to
Yes, marketing.
to the community.
It's information.
Right.
Any other discussion? Questions? Thank you. Moving on to the next item. It's the 2017-2018 vacancy update. Dr. Bergman.
Sorry. Good evening, President Crouch, members of the board, Superintendent Holmes, and audience. I'm going to invite Ms. Emily to come up because we're going to give you a vacancy report. Typically, we do this in July, so don't get too scared because we usually have another month to be able to look at our vacancies. What was passed out is the vacancy report. Just to give you an idea, it's color-coded, and I'll have Ms. Emily share with you, and then you can figure out the coding. It helps all of us keep track of who, what, and where, what we're looking at when we're dealing with our vacancies.
I thought I had 6 pages there. I just
So, Ms. Emily.
Thank you, Dr. Bergman. Good evening, President Crouch, Superintendent Holmes, and members of the governing board. Thank you, as Dr. Bergman said, for allowing us to talk with you today about the vacancies for the 17-18 school year. I've been looking through this document. I've prepared it for the last 4 years now, and it's interesting to see how we've kind of fared over the last couple of years. As Dr. Bergman stated, the information that you're looking at on this PowerPoint is from June 7th, the vacancies from last week, and that is a full month prior to where we were last year on this same presentation on July 7th. So typically we do see some hiring going on at the end of June. People are finally getting really anxious, making their decisions to either stay or be hired on new to the district. So without further ado, yes, and our substitutes also do get hired in July, and so sometimes those numbers are also reflected as being additional hires in the long-term subpool, as well as through emergency certificates and different other alternative modes of certification, such as intern certificates, etc. So for that first slide where it says certificated or certified vacancies, you'll see that we're at 56 as of last week, 56 classroom vacancies. And that's in comparison to the 35 from last year. It's obviously something that we don't like to see. We don't like to see that high number of vacancies in the classroom, but we are working hard to make sure that that number is decreased as much as possible, especially before the start of school. The vacancies by school level, as you can see on this graph, and I'm a big graph person because I'm a very visual person, and so as you can see, the elementary graph is significantly higher and has been over the last couple of years. And it's been really interesting to see that primary placement of teachers has been really difficult for us. K through 5 has been a tough section of teachers to fill for us. We've had some really great relationships with some intern programs, such as the University of Arizona South, who've worked really hard with us to staff our science, our math, and most of our secondary programs with intern certified teachers, but they don't have a program for elementary. So we work hard with PIMA to work on the intern certs for elementary school, but it's just not at the same quantity as we would like to see.
And I want to stress something. Last week I was able to go to an ADE roundtable where they were talking about all the changes that are going to happen with certification August 9th. Big changes. And I'll share those with you in July once they're all formalized and we have a direction of how we want to move. But what I wanted to point out tonight for those elementary and what sparked my interest is that they're developing a student teacher certificate where we can pull in student teachers who want to be elementary teachers. And I'm not sure why, I'd love to be an elementary teacher, but who want to be elementary teachers, we hire them on the student teacher certificate. They do their student teaching and they get paid and go on to a contract at that time with this certificate. And then we hire them as soon as they graduate, receive their certification, and then they stay within that classroom. So you don't see a break, and it helps with consistency for those students who have that student teacher and then just carry on and go through the year. So that was a plus.
Definitely. We also have, to kind of piggyback on that, but we also have quite a few teachers in our classrooms right now who've graduated with their education degree and just cannot pass the NES tests in order to get their certification. So, and those people are reflected in these numbers because they're truly a vacancy because they've been long-term substitutes, they've been emergency certified in the past, and so every year we have to repost their positions and try to recruit certified employees for those positions. So we do have teachers in these positions that may just not be able to pass the NES exam, but have their bachelor's degree in education. So moving on to the vacancies by category side, on here I'd like to point out the SPED column, and the SPED column is a big concern for us this year. 17 special education teachers is where we're currently looking to fill. And Dr. Bergman and I were talking earlier today, and we wanted to point out some information to you about the special education teachers. Not only is it notoriously a hard-to-fill position. Districts all over the city, state, and nation are having a hard time filling special education positions. But we also do not offer hiring bonuses or retention bonuses for special education teachers or any other hard-to-fill position. And most of the school districts in town do offer either a hiring bonus or a retention bonus, so a year-to-year bonus of between $2,000 to $4,000 for hard-to-fill positions, and one of them being special education. So that is definitely something that we wanted to point out. And we've made tons of strides with our salary in the past couple of years, but then so have other school districts. And so we're still in the mid-range for first-year teacher placement on the salary schedule. But to end on a positive note, we have seen an increase in our retention strategies from last year to this year. According to our last count, we had about 185 resignations last year, and this year we've had 85. So that's a pretty significant difference. I'm thinking that a lot of that is attributed to the equity adjustment that we provided to our teachers last year, and some other different programs and things that we've implemented as retention strategies for the district. So we are overall hoping to see these numbers decrease over the next month, and so that our numbers will look a little bit closer to where we were last year and hopefully under where we were last year come the 7th of July. Are there any questions or?
Any questions from the board?
Could you just real quickly describe the colors?
Sure. Let's see here. So all of the blue, are the high school. And then we have middle school in green, but then we also have, yes, all of the middle school is in green, and then the elementary is in pink. And then we also have the red counselor and elementary librarian, because those are the out of classroom positions.
And they're typically hired through the district and then assigned where they're going to be going once they're hired by district, by curriculum and instruction. Usually curriculum and instruction takes the lead on that, interviews them, gives us a recommendation, and we move forward with it, and they also make the assignments.
And then on the right side in that last column where it says notes, that's where you will see the how we categorize that last slide vacancies based on category. So that'll give you a little picture of what that looks like, where we put content and elective and stuff.
And again, content being, math and science always being hard to fill, but we're staying competitive, I think, with math and science. We have some openings, but not to the degree that we've had in past years. So we're retaining some of our, our math teachers and our science teachers who are coming to us, they're staying. Some of them are shifting in the sense they want to move from, say, a middle school to a high school, or high school to middle school, but as long as they're with us, but they're choosing to go to a different level, I think that's fine. And then giving them that accommodation of being able to make that choice of where they want to work. I think any employee is free to make that jump if they have the certification. And those rules are changing, as I shared.
And one other quick comment, I just want to clarify something. On the certified vacancy slide, that second slide, it does say they're certified non-classroom 5 vacancies. Those do include a nurse vacancy and 2 other non-classroom vacancies that aren't shown on this because they are categorized as professional non-teaching.
So we only have one nurse vacancy at this point?
As of June 7th, we had 2 nurse vacancies. I'm sorry, I apologize, it was 2 that was on the original PNT. Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So our nurses are filled? We
Ms.
have,
Tom? No.
I'm sorry.
So nurse positions, with exception, we're down to 2 nurse positions are not filled.
2 nurse positions, that's correct.
Okay.
Ms. Tom?
So today we're going to approve quite a few employees, certified employees. Are those included in the numbers, or are numbers going to get better if we were to have included those?
Our numbers will get
So
better.
today's hires are not part of the numbers, so they'll get better from there.
That's correct. The thing that we've kind of battle with every year is that we do hire, and every governing board, we bring across more hires, and it's wonderful, but then at the same time, sometimes we also experience more resignations. So we do try our best to hold people to their contract, and in the event that they sign their contract, we try to work with them on finding a replacement for that school, but then we do end up, eventually, once a replacement is found, releasing. So that's kind of how we have that fluctuation sometimes.
Mr. Holmes?
Sure, I want to make a comment specifically on our long-term subs that are in programs. So we have, just so I make sure I'm clear and the audience is clear, so we have in the 61 current vacancies, folks who potentially will come back who are in a program that's been teaching in our schools for the last couple years but hasn't completed the program. Is that correct?
Well, so it's two different things. So we have an intern program, and those employees have an intern certificate. So if they have been hired back for this year, they're not in these numbers. Then we have long-term substitutes, and they're kind of our other bucket of teachers. And in that bucket of long-term subs, we could have potentially the teachers who have graduated from the College of Ed but haven't completed their NES test. So they're kind of in a separate bucket. We did work with quite a few of those teachers last year and place them on an emergency certificate. And so then that would then reduce our vacancy numbers because we would count them as a certified teacher.
And they're not counted right now.
So when sorry, Mr. Kraut, so when we hire an emergency sub in the classroom, the vacancies go down, but does the position stay vacant in terms of a posting?
Yes, we typically keep all of our long-term substitute vacancies posted in the hopes to fill with a certified teacher. In the event that we emergency certify any of those long-term substitutes, then we would remove the vacancy because our hope and our plan is to work with that employee to pass the exam or to enroll in an intern program in order to provide that more consistent certificate.
And currently ADE is looking at that certificate and all those different things. They haven't made the changes yet to it. There's stipulations to it to be able to renew it year to year. But because of the shortage, one of the things is they're reevaluating that criteria because they're finding it's a bit stringent and they need to loosen it in order for those people to then rotate over. Because what they're looking at also is that somebody who can demonstrate 3 continuous years teaching can have a waiver to deal with those content area tests, and then can get their certification if we show consistency and they can see, and you can verify that they're progressing adequately and doing a good job in the role that they're in. So they're really putting it more to the district to make those verifications, but it's not, they haven't put that stamp on it yet for the emergency cert employees yet.
Ms. Quintero?
So if they don't make it and they're not a good teacher, do they get evaluated the same?
When we put them on emergency certification, we ask the principals to evaluate them, and they use the same tool that they use with anybody. The ones who are typically not evaluated are just the substitutes who come in and go out. It depends on how long they're in a long-term situation. But if they're not working out, they usually rotate out until they find a substitute who is dependable and is doing a job, and then they work with them to do that. Last year we had a person identified to work with our long-term subs to help them with that professional development. Typically it's management, with management and helping them gain the skills that they need to be able to manage. And then once you manage, then that instructional piece can be put into place.
Ms. Quintero?
So is the support there for new teachers and long-term subs and
that's something we have to look at. That piece is there for our new teachers. This year that we did not move into emergency certs until the second semester when we started looking at the rules, and it kind of loosened them up a bit in the second semester. I think if we decide to go that route again, we need to work with the PD coordinator to see what can we put into place, or how can we support them in the NTO process and include them in that to assist them in their emergency certification and gaining those skills, going to new teacher training, gaining the basics like we do any first year teacher with that. Substitutes are a little different, and we haven't gone that route yet because, again, it's a cost for professional development and finding the monies to support that, because we always have a large pool of new teachers, and each one of them taking them through professional development is a cost to the district. Because you're taking them out of the classroom usually, and you're asking them, you're looking at substitutes for them as well. So it's a sub for a sub.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Stone?
You know, with all the changes that are coming up, if one of those changes are that long-term subs after 3 years can become
Not subs.
long-term
That
subs.
question. I asked that question. What about subs? Because we have people who have done long-term subs for us, and the examples are those long-term subs who have an elementary degree, have subbed for us 3 years in long-terms, but they can't pass that test. And they say, well, we haven't gotten to that one yet. Substituting doesn't count.
Just emergency
As
certifications.
experience. Emergency certs are looking at that.
And do we evaluate emergency cert
Yes,
teachers?
yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is request to hold a public hearing, adoption of the 2017-18 annual expenditure and allocation of monies for teacher salaries by 1.06%. Mr. Holmes?
President Crouch, members of the governing board, I'd like to request that at our July 11th meeting, we have our public hearing for, that's required for the 1.06% increase in teacher salaries. We're required to do a public hearing on just comments, as well as a public hearing on our general budget. So I'd like to request that becomes part of our general budget public hearing as well, so that we can have both at the same time. It would occur again right prior to our governing board meeting, but this is strictly the 1.06% that will go directly to teachers.
And so the request would be for our budget and the 1.06%?
Yes, and technically, it will be for both of those as well, yes.
The two separate
actions.
Two separate action items. The public hearing will, as we plan to post it, the notice of public hearing will indicate that the district will hold a public hearing at, I think, at 6:30 p.m. for the purposes of adopting its 2017-18 budget and for discussion regarding the governing board's plan for distribution of the 1.06% increase to teacher salaries. The public hearing input will be obtained at that point. Close the public hearing, open the regular board meeting, and then address adopting the budget as an item, take action on that, and then address the separate agenda item regarding the 1.06% increase and take an action on that.
Thank you. Ms. Dahl?
So I'm just going to ask you, seeing that our motion, is that going to cover all that you just said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then I'd like to make a motion.
Ms. Dahl?
I'd like to move that we approve the request to hold a public hearing on July 11th, 2017 at 6:30 p.m. with the regular governing board meeting to follow at 6:40.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Stone?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye. Motion passes.
Mr. Crouch.
Ms. Stone?
I'd like to move that we approve the board recess into executive session for discussion of personnel pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A1 and recommend to move the superintendent has reached, that if we need to, has reached a percentage of
Don't
the,
say that yet.
That's not yet.
okay, so we don't need to move into that one yet?
No, that's the results of the
Right,
executive
that's
session.
D. Okay, so just number
the
E.
first- Just number
E
E.
and E.
Hmm?
I mean, D we already did, so E, we don't have to do F until later?
Correct. So your motion is to approve the board recess into executive session for a discussion of personnel pursuant to ARS
Okay.
Section 38
I didn't know if we needed to.
dash 431.03.
Which I did that. I
A1.
didn't know if we needed to also say we're gonna come back out and do the goals
No, that we do that when we return.
when we come back out.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Strong?
Yes?
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion carries. We're moving into executive session.
Little break?
Yeah, 5 minutes. Ms. Dawn?
I recommend to move that the superintendent has reached 95% of the performance goals during the school year 2016-2017 as required under ARS 15-341A40.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is suggestions for future agenda items. Are there any suggestions for future agenda items?
At this time.
Since there are not, would someone like to make a motion?
I'd like to move that we adjourn.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Thank you.